Tonight on CFTK-TV News, Kitimat's mayor reflects on a leaders' meeting, next steps required on the Alberta-BC pipeline plan, and Prime Minister Carney's cabinet shuffle.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. I'm Jaylene Matthews. The mayor of Kitimat recently met with some high-profile leaders to discuss industry. CFTK-TV's Kel Maslin has more.
Last week saw the mayor of Kitimat, Phil Gerbuth, the elected chief of the Haisla Nation, Maureen Nice, and the premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, get together for a meeting. Mayor Gerbuth ended up later providing some details on what was discussed at the meeting and how it originated.
The meeting was nothing more than an introduction. I came up with this earlier in the spring after, of course, the federal government, with all the tariffs going on down south, federal government said, we want to look at other avenues for Canada to get our resources elsewhere. And so if you can't go south, there's not too much north, so you're either going west or east. And being on the west coast, anything that might be going to Asia would, of course, be going either through the Port of Vancouver, Prince Rupert, or Kitimat. So I thought it would be a good idea at that time to organize and just to at least introduce Kitimat to the premier of Alberta, and just make the relationship and go from there. No projects or anything like that were discussed. It was just how could we possibly work together in the future. Here's what Kitimat has to offer, and go from there.
Germuth also emphasized that the meeting happening right before the announcement of the federal government and Alberta's new Memorandum of Understanding was purely coincidental, as the meeting was scheduled about 2 months prior. And while it was said that not much was discussed outside of the parties becoming more familiar with one another, Germuth was optimistic that everyone left the meeting on the same page.
I thought we did. On the same page was no actual product, no actual project was discussed in any way. So it was just leaving with a commitment that, hey, we hope to get together in the future and talk about other things.
For CFTK-TV News, I'm Kel Maslin.
Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke today to hundreds of First Nations chiefs who just voted unanimously to call on his government to withdraw from an agreement that clears a path for a new oil pipeline to the BC coast. The issue was the first topic up for debate at the Assembly of First Nations meeting in Ottawa. The motion called to support the oil tanker ban and First Nations in BC in their opposition to a potential pipeline. Chief Donald Edgars told his fellow chiefs a new pipeline to BC's coast is nothing but a pipe dream, and that passing his resolution would show Carney they are united in their opposition when he comes to address the group. CTV's Abigail Biman reports.
This resolution has been accepted and approved by consensus.
The Assembly of First Nations unanimously passed a motion to keep the oil tanker ban off the BC West Coast and called to scrap the MOU with Alberta that sets the stage for a new pipeline.
We will use every measure possible to fight and oppose an oil pipeline.
Merle Alexander is representing 2 BC coastal First Nations at the Assembly and says a proposed pipeline is a threat to many people's not just livelihood, but very essence.
First Nations in Canada are feeling overwhelmed, that they're feeling as though the duty to consult is being undermined.
Canada can create all the MOUs, project offices, advisory groups that they want, but chiefs are united. When it comes to approving large national projects on First Nations lands, there will not be getting around rights holders.
It's bad enough First Nations don't trust the government, and this makes it even worse.
BC's regional chief came to Ottawa with the message that First Nations need to be consulted about development on their territory.
Not about us, without us, and that is a rounding message, I think, not only with the resolution, but with all our concerns in regards to Bill C-5.
And it's a message not just coming from BC.
We've had enough of being excluded, and there's going to be trillions of dollars going to be extracted over the next 10 to 100 years, and for First Nations to get chump change, it's not going to happen.
The Special Chiefs Assembly continues here until Thursday. Also on the agenda, a session about the Major Projects Office and Indigenous Advisory Committee.
Coming up next, the Minister of Environment reacts to pipeline talks. We've now heard from the Minister of Environment after Premier Eby had a change of heart over his objection to an Alberta pipeline going through the province. CTV's senior political correspondent Mike Lacoutal now on next steps if the project is to become a reality.
Do you support a pipeline?
Opposition MPs grilled the Environment Minister about a possible new pipeline from Alberta to the BC coast. But Julie DeBruzen says it's not only up to the federal government.
And we're not going to override the jurisdiction of our provinces, and we're not going to override the rights of Indigenous rights holders.
While the federal government does have the jurisdiction over interprovincial pipelines, the minister says any project will have to involve all stakeholders. Coastal First Nations are opposed to a pipeline going through their land in northwestern BC, and the former head of Kinder Morgan Canada points out there is another path.
Is it Kitimat? Is it Prince Rupert? Is it Vancouver? Do we go back to Vancouver and build another pipe, along the existing Trans Mountain route, which is always an alternative?
Premier Daniel Smith repeatedly pointed to the port of Prince Rupert. Smith says it's easier than sending tankers through the 159 nautical mile long Douglas Channel to Kitimat, BC.
When I look at Port of Prince Rupert, a lot of those issues don't exist there because it is right on the ocean.
On CTV's question period, BC Premier David Eby said he'd be willing to talk about a pipeline through his province if the tanker ban remains in place. Still, the MP for the Prince Rupert area believes it's too early to talk about any route without talking to communities.
With First Nations it's different because nothing really starts until an official consultation and accommodation process starts.
And that consultation has to start soon. The deadline for Alberta to submit its pipeline application to the Federal Major Projects Office is July 1st.
The moon will be at its biggest and brightest this week. A supermoon will peak on Thursday. A supermoon can look up to 14% bigger and 30% brighter than the faintest full moon of the year. Known as the cold moon because it marks the arrival of frigid temperatures, it is the final supermoon of 2025. Residents in parts of the BC interior are digging out after heavy snow resulted from a clash of a moist frontal system with Arctic air over the region. Environment Canada says Kamloops Airport recorded 17 centimeters of snow in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, 11 centimeters were reported at Barrier Highway Station and 10 centimeters fell at the Squillax Highway Station. The snowfall warning issued for the region has ended after Environment Canada previously said to expect up to 15 centimeters of snow in parts of the Okanagan and Thompson areas. And turning now to your Northwest BC weather report. Tonight on the North Coast, expect clouds. Rain beginning late this evening, temperature steady near +5 degrees. Over the next few days on the North Coast, expect continued rain and showers right through to the weekend. Daily highs 5 to 9 degrees, overnight lows from 4 to 7 degrees. Tonight in the Terrace-Kitimat area, expected to be cloudy, periods of rain mixed with wet snow beginning late this evening, a low of +1 degree. Over the next few days in the Terrace-Kitimat area, expect rain until Friday, then snow for the weekend. Daily highs from 4 down to 1 degree, overnight lows from 3 degrees down to -1. Tonight in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, expect increasing cloudiness, a 40% chance of flurries overnight, and a low of -5 degrees. Over the next few days in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, expect sunshine and flurries. Daily highs staying a few degrees around freezing and overnight lows from -1 dropping down to -5 degrees. And checking your Northwest BC highways report now. On Highway 16, there is bridge maintenance and road maintenance on Haida Gwaii, also water pooling, slippery sections, and utility work. On Highway 37, watch for utility work, also slippery sections, muddy sections, and compact snow. On Highway 37A, there's an industrial traffic December 6th overnight road closure planned. Also a section with falling rocks, bridge maintenance underway, slippery sections, and compact snow. On Highway 118, there are slippery sections as well as compact snow. On the Niska Highway, watch for slushy, slippery sections. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Culture Minister Mark Miller doesn't think people should use religion to escape prosecution for hate crimes. He's expressed support for removing a religious exemption on hate speech from the criminal code. Miller chaired the Justice Committee until he rejoined Cabinet yesterday, but he says his comments are his own perspective and it remains to be seen what the government will do. The verdict is in and has been a long time coming for the family of a Vancouver 15-year-old who was murdered in 2018. CTV's Brianne Foley reports.
Carter was on trial for the fatal shootings of then 15-year-old Alfred Wong, who was an innocent bystander, and alleged intended target 23-year-old Kevin Whiteside near Broadway and Ontario Street back on January 13, 2018. Wong had been traveling home from dinner with his family when shots were fired, one hitting him on the right side of his chest, which would send him to the hospital for surgery, where he died days later.
My parents and I will always love him dearly, and his death will leave a void in our hearts.
The Crown believed Whiteside had been in the area to kill Matthew Neves Rivas, who had relations to Carter, as he left the Indochine restaurant that night. They suspected that Carter was there to protect Neves Rivas, who was killed months later in another shooting in East Vancouver. Back in 2024, a jury had deliberated for 5 days but could not come to a unanimous decision, and that was declared a mistrial.
It's very rare for juries in Canada to not be able to reach a verdict and for a mistrial to be declared, especially in criminal cases.
The Crown prosecution began the retrial back in May of this year. The jury began deliberations on November 27th and were briefed on the Criminal Code's transferred intent rule, which states that if someone intends to harm a person and another person is harmed inadvertently in the process, they may still be held responsible.
Supreme Court Justice Catherine Wedge told the jury that if they found Carter guilty of Whiteside's murder, they must also convict him in Wong's death. They deemed him guilty on both counts. Brianne Foley, CTV News, Vancouver.
Still to come, Carney brings a Trudeau-era minister back to cabinet. A joint strike force involving more than 100 police agencies in Canada have resulted in record seizures of fentanyl over several months. Its action, forced on Canada by the Trump administration, reveals massive amounts of drugs being trafficked in Canada, but not across borders. CTV's senior correspondent Judy Trin reports.
These investigations took place on opposite ends of our province.
For months, police across Canada, in big cities and small towns, have been targeting organized crime.
We did find this group had certain photos or emblems.
Between May and October, a joint strike force of more than 100 police agencies focused on taking illegal fentanyl off the streets. Police seized 386 kilograms of fentanyl, more than 1,700 kilograms of methamphetamine, and nearly 6,000 kilograms of cocaine, along with more than $13 million in cash.
There's some big players here, and there's some smaller departments, but it's a real shining example of the feds, the provinces, and municipal agencies all working together.
A chunk of fentanyl there. This is the second time that a national effort was coordinated by the RCMP to target deadly opioids after Donald Trump accused Canada of not doing enough to stem the flow of fentanyl across the border earlier this year.
Canada's a very bad abuser.
The RCMP say more than 8,000 arrests and charges were laid involving 200 organized crime groups. Despite the record quantities of seizures, investigators say fentanyl is being trafficked for domestic use, not being exported.
The source is not each other. The source is from external countries, external regions. So fentanyl is not going certainly from Canada to the U.S.
The Mounties say that China continues to be the biggest source of precursor chemicals that go into the making of illegal fentanyl. In the near future, the Mounties plan to target ports, rail yards, and airports, along with drugs that are shipped through the mail.
Prime Minister Mark Carney did a small shuffle to his cabinet yesterday after Stephen Guilbeault resigned last week over a disagreement in climate policy. And Carney is bringing back a familiar face from the Trudeau era. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
Familiar but surprising return to cabinet.
Now I have Mark Miller.
Mark Miller, a close friend of former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, is back in the inner circle. Appointed by Mark Carney in a dual role as Minister for Canadian Identity and Culture and Minister of Official Languages. Before this shuffle, Miller had been on the backbenches since March.
I had the opportunity to be a minister for about 6 years and now another opportunity. So it feels great. I am a guy that likes to be busy. And so, I was a little restless.
Miller previously served as Immigration Minister and Minister of Indigenous Crown Relations. His experience could help Carney navigate anger over the pipeline agreement with Alberta. That MOU pushed the government's most ardent environmental defender, Stephen Guilbeault, to quit cabinet. Guilbeault remains part of caucus.
Because of the nature of the people that get elected to these posts and what we expect them to do, we expect them to have frank and honest conversations, notably with the Prime Minister, so not worried about caucus unity.
The Minister of Public Service and Procurement, Joël Lightbound, takes on the additional role of Quebec Lieutenant.
It's an important role in federal politics and in Quebec politics, and I look forward to getting to it I'm sure with the advice of Stephen Guilbeault, who's been an outstanding Quebec lieutenant.
Julie DeBrusen's responsibilities are also growing. She's now Minister of the Environment, Climate Change, and Nature, responsible for national parks. All three ministers who were involved in this mini-shuffle were first elected in 2015, when under Justin Trudeau they formed the government. Now, under Mark Carney, the cabinet size remains at 38 members.
Costco isn't waiting to see whether the U.S. Supreme Court strikes down President Donald Trump's most sweeping tariffs. It's the biggest company yet to take the Trump administration to court, demanding refunds of the import taxes they've paid so far. Costco's complaint with the U.S. Court of International Trade in New York says the retailer is demanding the money back now to ensure it gets paid. Turning to the markets now, Canada's main stock index finished in negative territory, weighed down by losses in the basic materials sector, while U.S. markets moved higher. The Canadian dollar fell less than 1/10 cent. The price of gold was down $54. Oil was down 68 cents. Natural gas dropped 9 cents. Aluminum was up $34. In Toronto, the TSX was down almost 53 points. The Venture Index dropped 4 points. In New York, the Nasdaq rose 138 points, and the Dow Jones was up 185 points. Still ahead, a new legal fight for Sean Diddy Combs. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre accuses the Liberals of a bait-and-switch on housing promises. The Parliamentary Budget Office's latest report says it expects the federal government's new housing agency will only boost housing starts by just over 2%. But Housing Minister Gregor Robertson says Build Canada Homes is just getting started. The Liberals launched the agency in September to boost the total stock of affordable housing. Holiday shopping season is upon us, and data is showing some shifting consumer trends this year. CTV's Adrian Gabriel reports.
December has arrived, and with it, a flurry of Canadian consumers.
I'm sticking to a budget, trying to get really good deals, yeah.
A survey by the Bank of Montreal has found that 3 in 5 Canadians are adjusting their holiday spending amid tariff concerns, with 37% focusing on made-in-Canada gifts.
Being a bit patriotic about, how they want to spend their money over the holiday season to sort of give back into the Canadian economy.
The economic headwinds from inflation to debt levels are causing some to keep a tighter grip on their wallets.
What consumers are saying, the top of the list is to save money this holiday season. And so if you're going to be marketing online for Cyber Monday, I suspect you're going to be bringing out your best deals.
And cost-conscious Canadians are shifting purchase priorities. This survey by the Business Development Bank of Canada says the average household is spending just over $940 this year. More than half of that is expected to go towards Canadian products, contributing to $11 billion to Canada's GDP while supporting thousands of jobs.
Canadians are really being mindful of how they're going to spend their money over the holidays and where they want to put their money. And I think for a large chunk, it still is going to be around supporting, Canadian businesses.
Financial experts say taking the time to map out your shopping list as well as planning your purchases in advance are key to keeping a cap on your budget. Try and avoid those impulse buys and last-minute shopping. The calendar has now turned to December, and for those celebrating, the clock is officially ticking to get your gifts.
There's a new legal fight between 50 Cent and Sean Diddy Combs. It's tied to the release of a new Netflix docuseries due out today. Here's ABC's Hannah Batta.
We have to find somebody that'll work with us that has dealt in the dirtiest of dirty business.
The series contains never-before-seen footage of Combs debating strategy with his lawyers in the days leading up to his arrest in New York last year.
I am going to let you professionals look at the situation and come back to me with a solution.
It also includes video of Combs greeting fans in Harlem.
I'll accept it.
And then saying this about the interaction moments later.
I need some hand sanitizer. Hold on. I got it. I've been out in the streets amongst the people. Yeah, I gotta take a bag. Like the amount of people that actually I'm coming in contact with, that's what I have to do. You know what I'm saying? Oh. It's like 150 hugs.
Now Combs' lawyers are demanding Netflix pull the series, threatening legal action, claiming Netflix is using stolen footage that was never authorized for release as part of what they call a shameful hit piece. The series is executive produced by Combs' longtime rival, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, and director Alex Stapleton, who said, quote, "We obtained the footage legally and have the necessary rights," end quote. Before the cease and desist demand was sent yesterday, Stapleton and Jackson sat down with our Robin Roberts to discuss the series.
How do you respond to people who say that it's more about the disdain that you have for Sean Combs than it is for giving the victims a platform?
It's not personal.
The show is not completely the perspectives of people that did not like Sean. Not everyone needed to have an allegation to be a part of this.
Combs is currently serving more than 4 years in prison on prostitution-related charges. Hannah Batta, ABC News, New York.
That's our news for now. For more local news, you can find us at CFTK-TV.com. We're also on TikTok, YouTube, X, and Blue Sky. And we'll be back tomorrow with more local news from around the Northwest and beyond. Thanks for watching.